If you're stuck at 1200 elo on chess.com, then you need to watch this video and pay close attention. This is the average Joe rating climb where I start with a low rated account, work my way up, and I explain the thought process behind every move. You're going to get to see how we get from 1200 to 1300. Let's jump into the first game. We're going to put a pawn in the center. We see black do the same thing. We're going to attack the center and develop a piece at the same time. We get very common opening moves. Now, there's a lot of ways that we could play this. I'm going to try to play the Halloween Gambit. So that starts by getting both knights out, and we're trying to see knight f6 here. We want to see knight f6. Okay, so this is called the 4 knights game. And this gives us the opportunity to play what's called the Halloween Gambit. Halloween Gambit, we actually do something crazy. Okay, we sacrifice our knight for this pawn. And normally you don't do this, right? Because knights are 3 points, pawns are 1 point. And that's not a good trade. But when you do it in the Halloween Gambit, there's a very specific reason for why we're doing this. Because when black recaptures us, we're going to gain a bunch of tempo by chasing the knights around. And we're going to get this huge, big pawn center. Okay, so now I'm going to go d4. And you end up with this aggressive attacking position, even though you're down the piece. All right, so it's not an opening for the faint of heart, but you can have some great success with this, and you're going to see it's not that easy for black to just get into a winning position just because they have the extra piece. In fact, Stockfish in a lot of cases recommends a move like bishop b4 where you just kind of sacrifice the piece back at some point and don't worry about it. Yeah, there's 2 ways. They can go knight to c6 and knight to g6. And what we are going to do now is push forward and gain space and attack the knight. Okay, so I'm going to go e5, and you'll notice the knight can't go here, can't go here, can't go here, and can't go here. So where does the knight have to go? Well, back to g8. And so, yes, black gets the extra piece, but now they're undeveloping their pieces. There you go. And we have this nice, huge, big center. Okay? Now, when you have a position like this, you want to keep developing your pieces quickly, rapidly. You can also push pawns forward, so moves like f4 and h4 might not be crazy, but I'm going to prioritize just getting my bishop on this aggressive diagonal. So I'm going to go bishop to c4, and I want to castle quickly, get my king out of the center, and take advantage of the fact that black's king is still in the center. Okay, so this is a very weak spot in king pawn openings because the king is right there. The bishop can sacrifice sometimes, or you can use other pieces to help support it, and it's very dangerous for black. So we'll see how they're going to respond. Like I said, I would like to castle, figure out what to do with this bishop. Honestly, the bishop might be okay just where it is. Okay, bishop to b4 I think is a pretty decent move from black. So they're trying to develop and also put some pressure on our knight. Now, I'm not really concerned with that. I think what I'm going to do is just castle. I'm just scanning if a move like queen f3 makes sense. So the point of queen f3 would be, how do you stop checkmate? You can't use your knight or I'll take it. You can't really block. You could go queen e7 though, and I think queen e7 does a really good job of defending that. I don't really see a follow-up. I say that, bishop g5, you would take, yeah, the king actually escapes. So I don't think we want to do that. I think the best thing to do here is to simply castle. Okay, we want to use our rook, we want to get our king out of danger. There's no longer a pin here. Now if black wants to, of course they can trade, but they have to give up the bishop. Then we have the bishop pair. We have another pawn that comes to the center to help support, and okay, they don't do that. They go for c6. Now, this is a key thing that you want to remember, okay? Whenever someone moves a pawn forward, it means they've created weaknesses somewhere on the board. So when I see this pawn moving forward, the weakness that jumps out at me is this d6 square, okay? And I'm envisioning my knight landing there, and that's going to cause some big problems for the black king, okay? Even if the bishop trades, then I've opened up the e-file, and again, big problems for the black king. So the move that immediately jumps out in my mind is knight to e4, all right? So, and I don't even think I really need to consider too much about anything else. It's just such a powerful looking square. Remember, if they try to play d5, we do have en passant, right? And so I am going to go with knight to e4, just taking advantage of the mistake that I think that my opponent made by creating this weakness. Because as long as the pawn was on c7, I couldn't do this, right? So knight to d6 is the immediate threat. Like I said, it would be attacking here, which is very dangerous. Okay, and they do go d5. Now, at first glance, it looks like a fork. This is very important. You cannot forget about en passant. Okay, en passant is a legitimate move. It's a real move. And there are situations like this where it's the only move that'll save you, because otherwise I'm losing a piece here, right? This is going to be a bad situation. So I am going to en passant this to get rid of the pawn. Whenever a pawn lands side by side, you always have the option. That's what we're going to do. Now, you might think, okay, black just eliminated the weakness, but they've created a new weakness. This is another key point. When your king is in the center of the board and there is an open file where a rook can attack you, you have to be really, really careful. That's very, very dangerous. And so rook to e1 looks like the move that I'm going to play. I could trade first and then go with the check, but I think I'm going to do it first and just line up to create that discovered attack. Let me see if there's any other moves that make sense. I don't think so. I think rook e1 is what we need to do. So let's go rook e1, line up on the king, and black's got to be really, really careful with their next move. Okay, so they go for bishop e6, which temporarily blocks this. And this is a moment where I want to just calculate a bunch of different options. So a good habit when you're playing chess is come up with a list of moves that you think might be good, and then just go one by one and calculate them and see which one is the best. So for example, I think maybe taking one of the bishops might make sense. And I also think pushing d5 might make sense. And I also think maybe bringing my knight to g5 to attack might make sense. So I've come up with this list of 1, 2, 3, 4 moves. And I'm just going to start with kind of the most obvious ones and see where that leads me. So the most obvious one would be taking here with check. Of course, black's going to have to take me back. So takes. I could take. They could take me. Don't really feel like I have anything amazing in that position. I mean, yeah, there's a pawn sitting there that I could attack with my queen, but black's probably just going to castle. That doesn't look very good. So I'm going to say that's probably not the best move. What if I take the bishop first? They take me. I don't have to take and go back to the same line. I could then go knight to g5 and attack that weak pawn. Now that looks pretty good, because now I have a serious attack that's probably going to be hard for black to deal with. I don't see an easy way for them to defend that pawn. Maybe knight f8, then they have to go backwards some more, right? That looks pretty good. Or I could just start with the knight right away. Kind of does the same thing, puts the pressure on that pinned piece. That looks pretty good. The other option, d5, is takes, and I'm hitting the bishop that way. Not bad, but I think I really like unleashing my rook and putting the pressure on e6. Okay, so I've analyzed the different options, make sure that I'm paying attention to, that my knight is defended. It's going to be pinning the bishop, so I'm not going to lose here. All the things seem to make sense, so let's go with knight to g5 and just attack on the open file where the king is. This is a key point. Notice how when I'm coming up with the move that I'm going to play, I'm asking myself, what are the biggest weaknesses in my opponent's position? Well, they're behind in development and their king is stuck in the center and my rook is lined up on it. So with that in mind, what's the best move? Well, it's probably something to do with that. I think it might be knight g5 just to attack that bishop that's pinned, and the king is right there. This is how I cause problems for my opponent. And you'll notice, even though I'm down a piece because I sacrificed that knight earlier, it's not really helping my opponent, right? The knight is like, there's an extra knight, but it's sitting on back on g8. It's stopping them from castling. The rook is in, it's just not a good extra piece. And so that's why the Halloween Gambit can be very, very dangerous. Okay, so they go 97. Looks like they're trying to get the king to safety somehow. And this is a key point here. Again, if you are attacking someone's king that's in the center of the board and they're trying to castle to safety, top priority is usually going to be not letting that happen. Don't let them castle and get the king to safety. So how can I prevent that? Well, if I take here, they take me, and I take with the bishop, that stops them from castling. So that looks pretty good. If I take with the bishop first and then my knight jumps in, it also stops them from castling. You can't castle through a check. I'm also hitting the queen. I'm also hitting the pawn. That's a fork. That looks very good. So I think that's probably the best move. Let me see if there's anything else. No, that's got to be the best move. So yeah, the question is, would I rather have my knight or my bishop on e6? They both look good, but I think in this particular position, the knight is going to be more powerful. So because of that, I'm going to take with the bishop first. and then we will jump in with the knight, with the fork, and we're just all over the black king here, okay? Okay, they do recapture. I could take with the rook, but then the king could escape, I think. And so let's go with the knight, stopping the castling, okay? So black has a problem. You've got two weaknesses. You can't really defend both of them. Obviously, yeah, you have to save the queen, and now I think I will jump in and take the pawn. Now, the important thing here, another key point, is I'm not just taking a pawn. What I'm actually doing is forcing the king to move, which means they cannot castle for the rest of the game. That is much more valuable than just taking a pawn. I mean, yeah, a pawn is cool, but I need more than a pawn. I need the king to not be able to castle. That is very, very valuable, okay? So I think I'm going to jump back to here and just attack the king again, forcing it over here. I don't have to do that, but it just seems like a nice square for the knight. I could also just maybe go bishop g5 and just put the pressure here. That also looks pretty good. Yeah, so maybe I will just do that. Maybe I'll save this move kind of for later and just take advantage of the pin here for right now. So let me go bishop to g5. Basically, I'm looking at the position and I'm thinking, okay, this bishop is not really doing a whole lot. Let me get that into the game. Let's my rook into the game as well, and adds an attacker here. Now, the interesting thing now is 1, 2, 3, 4, and I have 3, 6, 7. So even if we just trade all the pieces, I've got 3 pawns for that piece that I sacrificed, right? Which is actually equal. And so even if we go into an endgame, that's okay. I can have decent chances to win an endgame with 3 pawns against a piece. It's obviously going to be tricky. You have to be careful, but already we can see that the opening was pretty much a success. We've gotten into a nice position. So some ideas that are coming to my mind would be queen e2, just getting the queen off the back and lining up on the knight. Maybe somewhere else I'm looking like would it make sense to bring my queen somewhere else? I don't know if I want to start thinking about c4 to try to push these pawns forward and bust open the king. So he does try to run, and we'd still have knight to e6 with a check, which is going to force the king back. Taking here doesn't really make sense. It's defended. And I think, yeah, here's a key point again. I think I am going to go with knight to e6 check. Here's why. Because when I force the king back, it's in between the rooks. They're disconnected. They're not defending each other. They don't have very many options of where they can move to, right? And so that's always a good thing to do if you can. So that's why I think that's important. Okay, so sorry, my 2-year-old is screaming in the background. So we have the knight in a good position. We have the bishop in a good position. We have the rooks in a pretty good position. I think this rook and this queen could be improved, and I'm trying to think how to do that. So an idea that I have, and I think I am going to try this, is to play the move c4. And what I'm thinking is if I can somehow push these forward and maybe open up some files here, guess what? This rook is going to slide over, and we're going to get to the king very, very easily. Okay, so for example, something like d5, if they were to take, that would be one example. Or c5, d5, if I take, maybe I open up here, would be another example. Okay, so the knight goes back. And remember what I said, I'm okay going into an endgame, so I'm not opposed to trading this knight if I needed to. So takes, I could trade here if I want to really go into an endgame. Or I could just leave it and maybe play d5. And if they take me, guess what? My rook invades. If they take me, I take here. We already talked about that. Yeah, I think d5 is a very good move. There is a little tactic where if I were to take that, there's a check and I lose my queen. But I don't have to do that. And just the fact that the c file would be open is going to be worth it. So here's a key point. When you have a piece like this that's deep in enemy territory, rather than trading it off, if you can just support it and then replace it with another piece, that's usually going to be better than, just giving it up for quickly. Okay, so yeah, we are going to do this. Could also take with the pawn, which is not totally crazy either, but I like having the rook come up here. I like having the rook come up. So yeah, this is what I was talking about. Takes. Sorry, takes. we would be in trouble because there's a tactic. The queen's lined up on my queen. Black could simply sacrifice with check, and then I lose my queen. Okay? So I don't want to do that. But if they take, I take, they take, I don't have to take the knight. I would find a different move. And I would take advantage of this open file, I think, is something like rook here. Okay? So we'll see if we see that. That's what Black wants to go for. No, they play king to c7. Okay. So I think I might actually... I'm looking for tactics, first of all. I'm looking for tactics. So something like this with a pin or, you know, pushing and making something happen. I don't quite see anything. I think I might play a move like this just to defend my rook and get ready to triple up. Takes, takes. If the knight comes in, we still go with a check. I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, let me go queen e2. I have to move faster. I'm down to a minute. I can't keep thinking so much, so I'm going to play some quick moves here to not lose on time, but I really like our position. I am actually threatening to just take the knight. Takes, takes, and we win this. So Black's probably going to defend. Then I'm going to probably triple up, attack it again. And yeah, the pin is going to be pretty annoying. I guess they could move it, which might be the best move, just to move the knight somewhere. No, they don't. Okay, so let's go here. Now we have the triple battery. Now you can't move the knight because you lose this. So I don't know what Black's going to move the king back, maybe. Might be the only thing they could do. Wonder if I can take. Play d6. No, that's defended. Trying to find a tactic here to win the game. But worst case, I could just trade and go into the endgame with a bunch of pawns and see what happens if I have to. Feels like there should be a better option. Maybe we take and we try to put a pin here. Because I'm really expecting Black's going to just try to defend their knight. I think I will just do that. Take and open up the D file. Yeah, that looks pretty good. King D8, I guess you have to play. I don't really know what else they can do. Because if you move the knight, like I said, I'm just going to take here. I have too many pieces. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and trade. And the point is to open up the D file so that we can maybe get another pin happening here. Yep, so let's do that. Just make sure there's no tactic, but it is defended with the queen, so I'm okay there. Now Black has another problem. I'm just giving them all kinds of problems that they have to deal with here. This is pinned, so you can't use that. This is pinned, so you can't really move that. I don't know what Black can even do. You go king c7. Takes, takes, takes. Takes. Looks like they get away with that. So I'll probably go bishop f4. Just. Yeah, notice they don't really want to take because they lose their queen. So I'm just piling up on those pinned pieces, right? And I guess they could still defend. I wonder if I could play something like c5. Oh, maybe I should have played c5 right away, actually. Maybe I missed that. Okay, well, now I can probably play it. Oh, I can also take here. So there's a nice tactic where the bishop is pinned, and so they can't take my queen. See that? You can't take me because of the check. And so there we go. That was the tactic that basically wins the game. Now we just take the bishop next, and Black loses all the pieces. Take that. Okay, let me go check. There's a nice tactic here. And then after they capture, I unleashed my bishop, which allowed the checkmate. Okay, so nice game there. We did have a couple of mistakes, but kind of shows you how dangerous the Halloween Gambit can be. Let's check the game review. Yeah, 73 to 57. Wow. And I'm not surprised. That was a very tricky position. Probably lots of opportunities were missed on both sides, it looks like. But that's a good example of what a Halloween Gambit game might look like. Okay. So let me see. What were some of these misses here? Yeah, there was some opportunities that I overlooked. For example, taking here, followed by Queen E1. I don't even actually understand this one myself. Why is this such a good position for me? Let's just say the bishop moves because we trade and then we pin here. Okay, so that one was relatively complicated. Let's check this other one. Bishop F4, the best option was to actually just take. Oh yeah, of course. Getting a queen and a bishop for 2 rooks is a good trade, but I definitely could have just done that. Didn't see that one. Okay, so yeah, there was a couple of opportunities there. But key takeaway. Halloween Gambit is very dangerous. Even though technically it's bad, it's very difficult for your opponent to survive, and you get a nice, fun game. You get to attack, you throw your pawns forward, you be aggressive. If you like that style, you should definitely try the Halloween Gambit. Okay? Let's jump to the next game. All right, we got black against 1245. They play d4. Okay. I will play knight to f6. There's some interesting gambits we can play here. Okay, he plays e3. Can't really do it against e3. I was hoping for c4. There's a lot more interesting lines you can play. Against this, I think I'll just get a pawn in the center and just play normal chess here. Okay, now he plays c4. Yeah. I'm going to go with e6. And you always want to be able to recapture with a pawn. Oh, this is interesting. I'm glad. Okay, I'm glad that we see this. All right. I was going to say you always want to be able to recapture with a pawn if they take you on d5. So whenever someone plays c, this is very important that you understand this. Whenever someone plays c5, they are gaining a lot of space. And if you allow them to have that space for the rest of the game, you're going to be in trouble. Okay? But what is the drawback to this move? They are not developing a single piece. They've only made pawn moves. I have a piece ready to go, which means you want to probably try to open up the center quickly, sooner rather than later, to best take advantage of the situation. Okay? So for example, e5 needs to be a move that I play maybe actually right now. Maybe right now. And you say, well, aren't you going to lose a pawn? Yes, I am, but then I'm going to jump my knight in, and I'm going to start taking stuff, and the position is going to open up, and that's how you have to approach it. So I could try to get my knight here first and then play e5. The problem is if white plays f4, I can't really do that unless I'm going to sack a piece, right? So usually there's 2 moves that you have to play against c5. Either e5 right away, or you could try b6 to attack it this way. And then on b4, you could play a5, and you just undermine it that way. I don't actually know which one is better. I think they both are pretty good. Let me just think for a moment. The only issue that I see with b6 is I'm wondering if the bishop check happens. I block. I think I would be fine because you're just going to make a weakness here. On b4, you have a5, and then you could trade, so white really gets into trouble. Yeah, so both of these would be very instructive, I think. I'll go with b6 in this game, but I think e5 and then jumping your knight in is also a good approach. Okay? Yeah, he's going to try to defend. This is what they usually do. And now we go a5. And here's the problem for white. You can't defend this with your other pawn because there's a pin. Okay, this is a very common idea that if you remember this, it's going to show up in a lot of different situations. So how do you deal with this? Well, you could take here, but then I'm going to take here, and what's going to happen is white's going to be is going to have a bunch of weak pawns. Okay, they throw in the check. It doesn't really affect my plan. I do want to make sure that I'm careful because if I play a move like knight d7, and then this pawn pushes forward, I could get all jammed up and not be able to move. Okay, so I'm going to play c6. Why am I going to play c6? Because it's a tempo move. It's going to force white to move the bishop back. And then I can continue undermining these pawns. Okay, so it's important. When they push by on you like that, you don't just sit around and do nothing. You do have to strike back. And that's what we're doing here. Now, I'm not going to take this way because then they just take. And they have this annoying pawn chain still. I'm going to take here. Undermine the base of the pawn chain, and then everything else gets weaker. okay? They want to take me, that's fine. I can recapture, not a big deal. If they don't take me, I'm going to just keep taking stuff, and I'm freeing up my position, okay? Queen to b3, interesting move. I don't think that really changes my plan. We are just going to take here, right? That's what we were trying to do this whole time. Okay, and you're noticing white's position is slowly but surely falling apart, all right? Now we're going to jump out with the bishop. We defend here, and we've undermined it. We've opened up our position, and guess what? I have 2 pieces out. White now has 2 pieces, but look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 3, 6, 7. I have a bunch of extra pawns, and I have a great position, all right? So I think I want to castle and get my king to safety. Let's see, this is defended, so not worried about that. I don't really have any weaknesses. There's no tactics that I'm noticing. Let's go ahead and get the king to safety. Okay, so we have a lot of ways that we could approach the position. I'm looking, and okay, here's an important thing. When you're trying to figure out what to do, try to find your worst piece, and how do you make it better? What's my worst piece? Well, maybe the knight, maybe the bishop. So if I go bishop a6 and trade for this guy, is that a good trade? I think so. I think it is. So let's develop a piece and maybe trade off one of our bad bishops or make it a good bishop, right? Okay, there you go. I'll take with my knight, and now that knight is also developed. Okay, now it's on the edge of the board, but it's somewhere, right? It's better than nothing, okay? And another key point, when you're trying to think of a plan, if you have a section of the board with a mass of pawns, a lot of times pushing those pawns is a good strategy. So where do I have a mass of pawns? Well, right here. Look at this. These pawns. So my bishop's in the way. I think I'm going to move the bishop, play c5, c4, c3, just use these extra pawns for my advantage, okay? So where do I want to move my bishop to? Both of these are probably fine. Yeah, I don't know if it actually matters. Let me go just here. But basically, I want to clear the path so that this guy can march up the board here. Charlie the c-pawn is going to be very powerful. Okay, so what's the knight attacking? No, no. Yes, you are attacking that pawn. I wanted to move it anyway, so I'm not a big deal. If the knight jumps in afterwards, I'll just move my queen somewhere. No problem. So let's go. Push it forward. Gains a tempo by attacking the knight. And c4 and c3 is coming next, and white is going to be in big trouble. Okay, so the knight goes back, doesn't really accomplish anything, and guess what? We're going to keep going with the plan. Keep pushing these pawns. Look at this amazing pawn chain that I have here. Sorry. Amazing pawn chain. So I could just leave them like this. They're very powerful like this, controlling a lot of squares side by side. I could also push and force the bishop to go back. And what's really amazing about that, and I think I'm going to do it, what's really amazing about this, guys, is the knight and the bishop are both stuck. Look at this. The knight and the bishop are both stuck and cannot be developed. So you can just see how these pawns are amazing, okay? Now, white's probably going to try to do this. I would love to be able to meet that by pushing b3. This is another key point, okay? When you're pushing your pawns down the board, if you can keep them side by side, that's amazing, okay? Because they always have the option of like either one can move forward. They cover a lot of squares in a nice straight line. Like it's just super powerful. So I want to make sure I can do that, but I can't or he just takes me. So what move do you think I'm going to play? Well, some move that supports my pawn, right? And I'm thinking queen b6 because I want to get my queen off the back anyway. Here's another key point. If you can accomplish multiple things at the same time, you should do it. So queen b6 gets my queen off the back. So now this rook can come into the party. Supports the pawn so that I'm ready to meet this with a pawn push. And the only thing that you might say is like, well, what about knight to c3? But then I was going to have a tactic pushing the pawn, forking these guys, and it was going to be bad news. Okay, so white's trying a different approach of trying to blockade them, which probably makes sense. So I think what I'm going to do is just look for an opportunity to get my worst piece and make it better. So I'm going to bring this guy over to the c file. I think I might like to put both rooks behind both pawns and just really get ready to push them. Here's another key point for you. Rooks should go behind passed pawns. Now, right now, I only have one passed pawn. which is this guy. Pass pawns are pawns that can become a queen with no other pawns capturing them. So this guy could. This one's not a pass pawn because of this guy. This one's not a pass pawn because of this guy. But rooks going behind pass pawns is usually very, very valuable. Okay? All right. So I wonder... Well, first of all, we could attack the queen. That looks pretty good. We could play e5 because I want to play like d4 and get another pawn to help support there. It does allow the knight to jump in, but that's not a big deal. I could just move my bishop back. Yeah, I think I will do that. So here's what we're going to do. I'm trying to get yet another pawn into the action so that I can really push these guys together. And if the knight jumps to f5, this is a very common pattern you want to pay attention to. Okay, you didn't do it. But if you put your bishop on f8, it just controls everything that the knight can do. Okay, very, very valuable square. So he goes here instead. Still attacks my bishop. I could also go here. Same idea, controls all the knight squares. The problem with that is it disconnects my rooks, which is not ideal. So because of that, I think I might just drop it back to f8 so it's out of the way. Don't have to worry about it getting attacked anymore. Let me do that. Making sure that everything's defended, but it is. I think we're good to go here. So I'm going to go knight c5 next, I think, to kick the queen away, unleashes my rook. He's got to worry about defending this. And then I'm going to try to push d4 at some point. I can't right now. It's just going to lose a pawn and open up the bishop, but I'm keeping an eye on that. Oh, okay. Well, now I have a couple of options. I could take it, or I could just push by. I just really like pushing by. I think these pawns are just so powerful. So I'm just going to push. I'm not even worried about that guy. I just like this. Look at this. This is amazing. And lucky for me, I have this knight ready to go to c5 to kick the queen out. And then we push here. And we get the pawns even further down the board. And white has no way to deal with that, I don't think. Okay, that's defended. I can take with the queen if I need to. Not a big deal. Let's go knight c5 and attack the queen. He's got to defend his knight here, I believe. So queen e2, but then you get an interference tactic here. I interfere with the queen. So queen c4 to defend, but then you walk into the discovered attack. That's what he chooses. This is not good because I can move my knight wherever I want and create the attack. So what do you guys think I should do with that knight? Well, I see two places, but I think one is better. I see here or here. Both attack the bishop, but this is a free pawn. So let's do that. Here's the attack. Here's the other attack. And you get rid of the pawn at the same time. Okay? So he takes my knight. Now I could take the bishop back, but queens are better than bishops, so let's take the queen. And I wouldn't be surprised if our opponent resigns here. Yeah, they do. Okay. So good game to our opponent. And I think that was super instructive, actually, on how to handle when they throw the pawns at you early in the game, right? Yeah, we had 95 accuracy. So let's go talk about that opening because I know a lot of people ask this question. Like, what do you do when they just throw the pawns at you, right? Well, this is what you do, okay? So you see that the engine doesn't really like it, right? Because you're not developing your pieces. And when you push forward, you can never go backwards. And so, yeah, the best move was b6. E5 is also on the list, though, of good moves. And, for example, you jump your knight in. And look at this. You're going to be able to easily attack that. You're already about ready to take this back. And you're the one who has a knight in the center of the board that's attacking stuff, right? There's even tactics. Like if you try to do this, bam, queen h4 check. And white's in trouble. You can't block because I take you. There's a pin here on your rook. Okay? Just an example, right, of the stuff that can happen. So b6. We're just going to take it. It's a very simple threat. We're just going to take it. Now, if they would have taken me, I take towards the center. This is a key point. Whenever you recapture, general rule is you want to take towards the center. It unleashes my rook. And now I'm the one who's going to start pushing pawns. That's simple, right? But it's important that you understand that when they try to defend, this tactic is very valuable. You have to understand that, right? And so, yeah, white just doesn't have good options. He tried this, but even if you take, I was going to take this way. Leave this. Look at this. These are ugly pawns that you can always take later. Double isolated pawns with the rook attacking them, super easy to take, okay? So you take this way, you free up your position, and then you deal with the ugly pawns later, and at the end of the day, you come out up a pawn or two. Okay? So remember, this guy's super important. That's going to win you a lot of games if you know how to handle that. Okay? All right, let's jump to the next game. Okay, we're black again. Another d4. Yeah, let's try again. We'll play knight f6 again. I want to try to play some interesting gambits here. Knight to c3. Yeah, okay. Against knight to c3, they just want to play e4, and usually I don't want to let them do that, so I'll play d5 to stop that. We want to fight for the center, and so this is how we're going to do it. Okay, so yeah, bishop f4. You have to watch out. This square and this square can be targets. Okay, this is a key point. They can be targets for forks. I remember the very first chess tournament I ever played in. I was playing black in a game like this, and I think I played a move like knight c6. And then knight to b5 happened, and I was like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. And you don't have a clear way to deal with that, right? You're just going to get forked, and it's just not a good position. So make sure you don't let that happen. So easy solution, simple thing. When you see this bishop lined up here and the knight comes out, just play c6. And you just shut down any ideas of the knight coming in there. That's a simple and easy thing to do. Very solid. Now, a lot of times you do want your pawn to go to c5, so there are other more complicated ways that you could approach that. But at the 1200 level, this is the easiest and simplest thing. Just play c6 and go on with your life, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and develop my bishop. I could play e6 and then develop this guy and just kind of save this guy for later. But one of the weaknesses when you bring the bishop out is that the queen sometimes attacks you over here. But since white can't do that, I'm like, yeah, I'm not worried about it. Let me just get my bishop out somewhere. So I'm going to go, I'll go to f5. I think both of these are probably fine, but I like going to f5 maybe to stop this bishop from coming here. And now I'll play e6. Get my bishop out of the pawn chain. Now we can safely move it up. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so whenever this happens, you have three options. Okay, you can, well, at least three options, sometimes more. You could take it. You can leave it, is number two, or you can go back to g6. Now, in this position, I think we have a fourth option. We could jump our knight in or something. So, very, very interesting. Taking is nice because you don't have to worry about the bishop. Generally speaking, getting rid of that light squared bishop is good for black, so I like that. Going back to g6 can be nice because when they take you, you open up the rook here. If you like that, that could be valuable. Leaving it is nice because you don't waste time dealing with it. You just develop another piece. So you can just develop very quickly. The problem with that is you do have to get doubled pawns when they trade, which is not the end of the world. It does open up the e file, and you get this really nice grip on e4. So there's some trade-offs there. So for example, bishop d6 is, you know, not a bad move. Knight to e4, we didn't really talk about it, but if they take with the knight, they get forked. If they take with the bishop, I don't know if we lose a pawn in that situation. Looks like we might, so I don't think I want to do that. So, with all that being considered, let's just go with the simple option of trading it off and going on with the game. All right, so we trade it. I don't actually know which one is best. I think it's more of a matter of personal preference. I'm going to go bishop to d6 now to kind of counter this bishop, and they choose to go back. Okay, so same thing that I just talked about now applies to white. If I take that, they can take me, open up the H file. Kind of depends on what you want to do. Now, I really want to develop my knight here, and I can't. I can't, because if I go there, they take me. So because of that, I am going to trade. Okay? And now, I'll develop my knight. Let's do it. Let's keep an eye on this pawn. It's defended right now. Aha, there you go. So I was going to say it's defended right now, but now it's got three attackers. Okay, so what am I going to do about that? Well, easiest and simplest thing is probably just to play h6. And we have to make sure there's no sacrifice where the queen can come in, but I'll just move my king and I defend. And I should be just fine. So yeah, we'll play h6. Now, key point here. I'm not actually threatening to take the knight because of the pin. Notice these rook pins on the A and H files. We're seeing a lot of that in these last couple games, right? This is an important tactic to be aware of because it comes up in a lot of situations, okay? And white understands that, and they realize that I'm not actually threatening anything. But I did save my pawn by moving it, so that's why I did it as well. Okay. There's a couple of ways that we can play this. Number one, move my queen and castle the same way as white. Number two, castle this way and prepare to get attacked and try to attack white. Number three, just wait a second. Just wait a second, which is what I think I'm going to do. I'm not going to castle either way right at the moment. And I'm going to move my queen somewhere. Now, the question is, where do I move my queen? So if I go to a5, I like that it's over here on the queen side so I can attack white's king. If I go to e7, I like that it defends my pawn because then if I do want to castle queenside, I don't have to worry about this fork. So it's a trade-off. Which one is better? I'm not totally sure, but I'm going to go with queen a5. My instinct just tells me go over here, and maybe we put the pressure on white by attacking with our pawn, like b5, b4. It looks like a pretty good plan. Notice my king is still in the center, but the center is not open. There are no rooks lined up on my king that I have to be worried about at the moment, so I'm okay with this. Now, if white plays e4, you better believe I'm going to start thinking about castling pretty quickly, one way or the other. So we'll see how white's going to approach the position here. They go king b1. Okay, so they're going to play a little bit defensive. And now I have to make a decision of am I going to play safe and try to castle this way? Am I going to go aggressive and castle this way, or am I just going to start the attack first? I think I'm going to attack first. And there's different ways to attack. We could play c5 to attack. We could play b5 to attack. I like b5, b4, because then the knight has to move. And then maybe c5 looks pretty good. I could be wrong, but I think I'll try b5. Here's another key point. Sometimes in these situations, you have to make a quick decision, especially in these games that you can kind of tell are going to be complicated. There's going to be a critical moment later. I don't want to use all my time right now trying to figure out the perfect plan. I just need to make a decision, play something, and then, you use that time later at the critical moments. And that's something that I've actually struggled with myself sometimes, where I try to think too much too early. I don't give myself enough time for the critical moments later. Okay, f4 is kind of a weird move. I guess they want to attack me here. But I don't know that I'm that concerned with that. I think I'm going to continue with my attack over here, attack the knight. Notice my queen is stopping it, so it retreats. Okay. And I would like to put my knight here. That seems like a great square for a knight, okay? But I can't because this guy, right? And I can't take because of the pin. So I need to deal with the pin. So I might consider king e7 or just moving my rook away. Maybe like rook g8 or something so that there's forces the knight. And then I can jump in on e4. I like that. Other option is I could play like c5 and try to go c4. Not too crazy. I wonder if king e7 is a legitimate move. The reason I'm thinking about king e7 is then this rook can come over to the attack. It also, oh, this is important, guys. It also defends. Okay, so we're threatening the knight here. Yeah, I like that. I actually really like that. So I'm going to go with king e7. We'll see if it's a good move later. We can check with Stockfish. But the point is, I'm now threatening to take your knight because I've dealt with my pin. Okay? Remember, this is a critical concept, right? Also, I've cleared the way. The rook can come over to attack. I could probably put like both rooks on B and C files and just line up and go for the king. But I think white has to retreat somewhere. And then guess what? You've given me the e4 square. I also could bring my knight here. So I have a lot of these ideas. Oh, okay. They didn't see the attack. All right. Yes, they're trying to attack me, but I don't think it's worth sacrificing a piece. I'm just going to go ahead and take the knight. Little detail there, but it's no longer a pin. This person's 1290. This is a really good example, I think, of how 1300s play. They played pretty well, missed one little detail here, and I think that's going to cost them, right? Losing that piece. Now, that being said, let's be careful here because the queen is going to come in. But I think my king's probably going to be safe if I just run away. So let me just take back. Yes, we might have to think a little bit here, but I see a pretty clear escape plan, so I'm not super concerned. Yeah, they do go for it. Okay. This obviously would be a fork, and I would lose a rook. So we do not want to do that. I could trade, or I could just leave it and just run immediately with the king. So, and by the way, initially I was going to attack the king, but now that I've won a piece, my plan kind of changes a little bit to like, all right, let me just defend my king and, you know, not worry about the attack on the king at the moment. You have to be flexible as you play the game, right? So the other thing I could do actually is trade and then put a rook here. It looks very defensive, but that's kind of the critical path that my opponent is trying to use to come into my position, it looks like. So it might be worth doing that. Or I just run over here, which I do like. I do like that also. So it's not super clear to me what to do. I'm going to go with this. Again, I don't want to use up all my time, so let me just go with this plan. I think my king is pretty safe if I get over here on c7. So we'll just go ahead and do that. Get away from the fork, right? So we don't lose, you know, the rook. Okay, they do trade. Let's recapture. And now, obviously, the rook is under attack. Nice thing about the knights in this configuration is that they defend themselves. So do I want to give up this pawn is the question. Do I want to go on the offensive or do I want to defend it? Offensive or... Yeah, let me just defend. I don't think I want to give that pawn up. Because it's doing a good job of stopping the knight from coming in. So I like that pawn, actually. So I will defend. Notice everything is defended, right? Everything's defended. Except my queen, but queen can't be attacked right now. Everything's defended. That's the best way to play against a queen when you're trying not to, you know, lose pieces, okay? Now, I think it's time that we get our queen back into the action. So we're not really doing much over here. I think we need to come back. Let me go queen d8, just so I can come over, defend wherever I need to, offer a trade, go into an endgame where my extra knight makes my life easy, right? Okay. Wow. Ooh, all right. This is a great moment for you guys to pause the video and work on your tactics. There is a really nice move here. You had a chance to pause and think about that. If you look at White's queen, it doesn't have a ton of options. It's kind of trapping itself almost. If I could take away the H file and this and this and this, do you know what that means? That means the queen is trapped. So rook h8. Another bonus of bringing my queen back, which I didn't really think about before, but it helps support my rook. And now we've just trapped White's queen. And that's going to basically do it for this game. So it's important to always be scanning for those tactics because they just pop up at the most random times, right? Like here we are, we're trying to defend our king, and then all of a sudden, oh, there's a queen trap, you know? Like you never know. And the moment that you relax is the moment that they happen, right? Let me just trade. No reason to overthink that. I think I'll jump my knight in next. Okay, let's just jump my knight into e4. The only way we lose this game is if we get flagged, probably, or blunder the queen, you know? So we'll just play quickly and keep an eye on the queen. Okay, let's go with queen h2. I'm just attacking the pawns. And I'm going to just start taking stuff, basically. Okay, what do I want to take first? Let me take this guy, because I'm attacking both of these. Let me... I could take this, but I think what I'll do is go here. It's kind of like a fork, where I'm hitting both pieces. You have to save the rook, but then you lose the knight. You can't save both. So I think this is probably the most powerful way to do it. Okay, and we will grab the knight. Now I can start looking for checkmates because I have a queen and a knight over here on the king. Check. Okay, I don't see it immediately, so I'll just take another piece. Okay, that looks like a free rook. Let's go ahead and take that. And now we have the knight to come in for the checkmate here. Notice the queen is cutting off all the king's escape squares. Okay, he does create an escape option there. So let me do this to take away that. Get rid of another pawn. And then now let's see. Do we have a checkmate here? Wow, it's very close. Yeah, I think I can go here. he's going to have to push his pawn. This is important, guys. This is very important. Pay attention. You have to make sure you don't stalemate them. Pawn can't move. Pawn can't move. King can't move. You have to make sure you give them an option, but just have this pawn. So I'm going to go here. The king can't move. The pawn has to push. And then we have checkmate on b3. Whenever the queen's in front of the king and it's defended by another piece, it's always checkmate. That's just the easy and simple way to do it. Okay? There you go. All right. Let's check the game review on that one. And 94, pretty well played game. Yeah. So, and what you'll notice is they played very well until that one moment, right? I can tell you exactly where this moment was. It was when they blundered the knight, right? And that was all we needed. Yep. So they didn't see, the threat behind king e7. That was kind of a sneaky move, and then blundered the knight. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next game. Alrighty, we have. Let me think. Let's go with another e4. Ah, okay, Scandinavian. So, Scandinavian, you could take it. There's nothing wrong with taking it. But I like to play this game. Actually, I don't know if everybody wants to play this game, but let me show you what happens if you take it. Let me show you what happens if you take it. Yeah, the queen usually comes out. And the best thing to do is just attack it. Just attack it with your knight. Oh, he goes for the check. Okay, okay. This is not ideal because he's not developing pieces. Okay, and what I like to do against this is just play bishop e2. Just block it with your bishop. And we don't want to block with a knight because then our bishop is stuck. Yeah, this is very, very common. Okay, what you do against this, here's what you don't want to do. Okay, this is important. You don't want to play knight f3 because your bishop is pinned, and then you have this really bad pawn structure. You have to take back with the pawn. Your pawns are all messed up. So you just leave it, and you attack the queen with the only other piece that you really can, your d-pawn. And this is important because we want to develop as quickly as possible. Listen carefully. When somebody attacks you with their queen early in the game, you want to harass the queen as much as you can with your pieces. Unfortunately, knight f3 doesn't work, so we change it up and we play d4. But this is a good developing move for us, right? Because our bishop's going to come out. Okay, he takes. I'm just going to recapture. And guess what? I have two knights, a pawn, my bishop's ready to go. And what has black done? Move their queen around a bunch of times, right? That's it. So this is a great position for us. So let's just keep developing. I think I could bring the bishop, or I could just castle. I think I'm just going to castle first because I'm not exactly sure where I want to put the bishop. So whenever you're not sure, another key point, if you have like two moves that you could play, they're both good moves, but one of them could potentially change. For example, like a bishop. And the other one you guarantee you're going to play, like castling kingside, I'm going to play every single time. Play that one first. See what your opponent does. Maybe you get some more information. And then when you move the bishop, you can put it on the absolute best square. Okay? Now, I don't know that we got a ton of information from that, but maybe I'm like, oh, he's attacking my pawn. Maybe I want it to be on e3, something like that. I always like to consider like what happens if I push forward and attack the knight. In this case, I think he's just going to castle and like try to pin me and stuff. So I don't think I'm going to do that. But it's something to think about. Yeah, so I think there's also knight g3 to just hit the queen that way. But let's just start with developing. I think we just go ahead, develop the bishop to a nice square. Add support. Yeah, he's going to do this. Okay. So the question is, what should we do? We've got the lead in the development. How do we best make use of it, right? And I can attack on the queen side. That's one way. I can play knight g3 to harass the queen. I'm not sure where it's going to go. Kind of like that because it lets my queen out. Maybe I can do some stuff over here. Yeah, I think I will actually do that. So let's start with that. I'm still debating on the attack on the queen side. Okay, I'm going to see where the queen goes first. Okay, he does go to a5. Yeah, so now I think it actually does make sense to attack. Here's another key point. When you're going to launch a pawn storm on the opponent's king, if there are pieces there that you can hit with your pawns, for example, a3, b4, b5, hit the knight, it's going to be a much faster attack because each pawn push is like attacking something. They have to move, right? So as soon as I see the queen over here, I'm like, yeah, that seems like a pretty good plan now, right? Let's attack over there. So I'm going to go a3, try to play b4, b5, kick the knight, to attack the king. If there's no pieces at all, it's going to take me like a bunch of pawn moves to even get to where I could attack anything. You guys understand how that works? So let's go b4. Okay, pause the video. What should you play? All right, that was an easy one. Whenever there's two pieces like this and a pawn can push, it's always going to be a nice little fork. I think that's a no-brainer for us. The only thing might be queen a5, takes, where he gets a piece back, but his king's still going to be exposed. So however you want to look at it, yeah, he's going to go for that, which is actually kind of clever, but it's still going to expose the king. We're going to get a nice attack, which is exactly what we want. I think we should do it. Okay, so we expose the king. Very good. All right. So obviously we have an open file. So rook to b1 seems like a very, normal and good move. There's going to be a check here we could play as well. Seems pretty good. Also, is one better than the other? It's hard to say. What I do like about the queen move, actually, is if he tries to block, we have a tactic that wins the queen. So I will go with queen to f3. But I think both of these moves are good. The other thing I'm looking at is if the king goes back, then we can still go to b1. If he goes here, now he's allowed queen a8 if we want to. Is that a good move? Queen a8, the king moves here. We could get a pawn at the very minimum. I wish my knight was on f3 and could go to e5, but it's not. It's on g3. So we could go here and, we could try to get to c5. Look at that. That would be incredible. Now, unfortunately, black has the knight there and would probably just take us. Still, not a terrible idea. Yeah, so I think the only options would be rook b1 or knight e4. Queen check and takes the pawn. It just seems like I'd rather just attack the king rather than just get a pawn like that. So, yeah, let's think about this. All right, I'm going to go with knight to e4. I don't know if this is the best move, but I'll just go ahead and play it. Yeah, of course he takes. We were attacking the queen, so kind of expected that. He goes for e6. Right, okay. So we definitely are going to need a rook to attack the king. Here's what I'm thinking. Maybe we actually go rook d1 because we want to play d5 because the king really is trying to escape here, right? If we can prevent that, we're in good shape. So maybe we should... that being said, I don't know. Rook b1 just looks really good to have the rook there too. Well, yeah, let's go with rook b1 first. I'm not sure. Maybe rook d1 was better, but basically we're just going to keep applying the pressure on the king with the pieces that are not doing as much. So starting with this guy, then we'll probably go here next and maybe play d5. Wow. Okay. Pause the video. There should be one move that just jumps out at you immediately. Rook b3. Looks like a fork. Now, he does have queen a5, but then we can pin it. And I think we're just winning a piece. So that seems pretty good. Unless there's like a checkmate. I don't really see a checkmate, so let's go for the material, right? Rook to b3. So we saw a fork with the pawn. Now we see a fork with the rook. And we're going to see a pin with the rook in just a second, I think. He's going to try to save the bishop, I bet. And then we are going to pin it with our rook. Okay, I'm just wondering, does it make sense to go here and try to do something? But no, I don't really see a follow-up. So I think we will just continue with rook to a1. And we're going to get ourselves a bishop. I don't see any way for black to avoid that. Let's go rook to a1, pin it, it's double attacked. And I think black is in trouble here. Okay, they try to play king d7. All right, well, which way should we take? Should I take with this rook or this rook? What do you guys think? Please tell me you said this rook. Because if you take with this rook, guess what? Good game. Checkmate. Goodbye. See you later. Gotta watch the back rank. Gotta watch the back rank, especially when you have your pawns in front of the king like this. Okay. Ooh, d5. I wanted to play d5 anyway to open up the king, but look at this. Now it's a tempo on the queen, which is kind of the story of this game, right? Tempo's on the queen. Let's do it. d5 hits the queen, gets ready to bust open black's king. Okay. I think I want to take, and then the idea is once this d file is open, it's all over for black. So let's do that. So this looks like a position where we should have a forced win. And I think we need to go here. Of course, if you run back this way, the game is over. That's checkmate. That's important detail. If you try to block, it's over. You lose a queen. You're going to have to move here or here. If you move to the dark square, guess what? Check. Probably have to go back. Check. And then I'm going to bring my other rook over. Yeah, I mean, somehow, some way, it must lead to a win. Let's go ahead and play it before I run out of time. And then work out the details. Definitely looks like this has to be the move. I think just check again. Of course, if we need to, we can always trade pieces, go into an endgame and win. Oh, he goes up. Wow, I wasn't expecting that. But again, there must be a win here. So sometimes you can play these moves without necessarily seeing it all. You just know that you're playing like the best move leading in the direction you want to go. And that's bringing more pieces to attack the king, right? So let's do it. Okay. Again, there must be a checkmate. It's just a question of where is it? Can we find it before we lose on time? Let's bring my bishop probably back to keep attacking. Looks like the king is running out of options, if you ask me. So here, here, here. Yeah, we just have to basically deliver a check and it's over. So, oh, we have to be careful because he could sack and actually, no, it's not checkmate. All right. Wow. Actually interesting. Let's go here. Let's go here. I think he has to sack the queen because if you go here, yeah, we can win the queen. I mean, I thought there was going to be a check. Okay, he does sack, so we'll just take it. And now, if you want to pause, what's the checkmate? Well, there's about, well, I don't know how many there are, but there's a couple different ones. You could go queen here. I'm going to go with the pawn checkmate. That's pretty cool. G3. Okay, looks like we did make a mistake there, but we got the job done. And good example of how to handle those early queen attacks, right? That's why you generally don't want to be bringing out your queen like that. It's just not a good strategy, okay? It's not a good strategy. So yeah, 91, not too bad. I don't know what the mistake was. We did have that miss. Bishop e3, okay. Let's see, I'm just curious. What was the best move? It was d5. Okay, interesting. So yeah, d5. And if he tried to castle, knight to d4 hits the queen. And I guess the point is, yeah, now you've got some nice attacking chances here. Okay, so I missed that one opportunity. But other than that, pretty much we're on track. Okay, so if somebody brings out the queen early, remember, key point, just develop as many pieces as you can, as quickly as you can, and gain tempo on the queen. So you go here, boom, gain a tempo. And then we gained another tempo with knight g3. We gained some more tempo with b4. You just attack the queen with your pieces. That's how you play. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. We're 1262. I'm going to stop this episode here. I'll see you next time. As always, stay sharp, play smart, and take care.